Attention please.
This uploading is only for educational purpose.
No intention to infringe copyrights.
Learning English with subtitles GPITRAL.
Follow us.
It seemed as though the rain would never stop. The flood spread to the Thames Valley.
Stand back and hold the side.
The story was one of mass evacuations and widespread misery, with people whose houses had never been flooded before forced from their homes.
We have been evacuating people through the night. I don't understand why people don't realise we, the residents, have got a team of people in their dry suits coming down, with boats being given, and yeah, we're going down to places that are very dangerous, you know, over waders, to get people out in the dark.
What about Wraysbury and the people in Wraysbury? We're flooding worse than Datchet, and yet they've got the army there protecting whatever they're protecting. We've only got 8 guys here protecting 400 houses in Wraysbury along the reaches.
As in Somerset and East Anglia, communities felt abandoned by the government.
Mr Cameron, get your waders on, get down here now, because we need you. We need the army, we need people, we need bodies. We are doing this as a community. Wraysbury will not go under.
One woman became the voice of the anger in Wraysbury.
What will it take for you to understand we are seriously in need?
Sue's outburst worked and the help started coming in. But now she and her neighbours face the cost of the clean-up and the fear of the future.
I do need to make it very clear that government needs to understand and live the life of a person who has no insurance because they can't afford the insurance, who has been flooded whether by floodwater or raw sewage. This isn't a 2-minute, 2 weeks, the water's gone, get back to life. This is, how am I going to raise 10, 15, 20,000 pounds or more to put my life back together? And what if it comes back again? Where, you know, this is people's lives, you know, not just livelihoods. We're not talking money, we're talking emotional stress and trauma that people are having to deal with, and that doesn't go away.
If you've never personally suffered from flooding, I think it's very, very difficult to understand the hardship that follows a flooding event. It's not just about the impact on your possessions or the fabric of the property. There are also long-term health effects, both physical health and mental health effects.
Just up the road in Wraysbury, the Davison family were experiencing those emotions.
It's just heartbreaking when you see it coming into your house and you know you can't stop it. You just want to cry, really.
The Davisons had already been told weeks before that their insurance company would not cover their house contents for flooding because of the high risk in that area.
When the insurance renewal came round this year, they said, we've got some good news for you, we're keeping the premium the same. Bad news is we're going to exclude flood. So the brokers worked hard to try and find me an alternative, but we're stuck with no flood risk.
What did you say to them when you said, look, hey, you know, for a dozen years you've covered me for
I had that very conversation and said, well, what extra is it going to cost me to include flood insurance? And they said, you're not understanding, Mr. Davison, we're not prepared to put flood risk on your policy.
Many communities have been left alone during the early days of flooding to fend for themselves. That really is not acceptable.
David Young was part of the community team who spent days helping to rescue his neighbours.
Wobble when you stand, but it'll be all right. Oh, well done.
Yeah, I've got it.
It didn't work.
No, it didn't.
Even this.
We need to find a better solution than this.
He is now part of a campaign group called Thames Awash, pushing for urgent government action to prevent his house and his neighbours' homes flooding in the future.
How high was it here?
Oh, it got straight into the house.
So higher than this? Higher than this?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Boy.
yes. Actually, the water came under the floor.
And it's all through?
Yeah, through the house. It started in the kitchen, and then within 1 hour, the whole house was covered with water. My worry, nobody can guarantee that it won't happen again. So that's the main issue that we need to tackle now, how to protect the house.
Down the road already have decided not to insure because of the premiums.
Exactly.
After 2003 or even 2007, and they're stuck with, do I rebuild? Do I sell my home as a building plot?
One bit of good news for those left without insurance cover is a government grant of £5,000 for affected households and businesses.
The government's response is welcome, and it's good that this has such a high profile because it needs the country to react as a whole. But the industry has been responding to this event since the start of December, since the first set of flooding we had down the east coast on December the 8th. We've been in emergency mode for the best part of 3 months now.
I think you know Dan Monson and Brandon.
At the height of the crisis, the government called an emergency summit of insurance bosses. But like householders themselves, the industry wants long-term solutions to the threat of flooding.
The best way to make properties fully resilient to flooding is to look at the overall flood risk management picture, where properties are built and where defences are built and maintained. It's very early to say what the overall cost is. We actually counted up the total claims cost for the period from just before Christmas, so the 23rd of December, through to the second weekend in January. And for floods and storms in that period, it cost around £425 million.
The economic impact of the winter's extreme weather is being felt by business owners across the affected areas, but particularly among farmers.
We've lost all our homes, we've lost our properties, we've lost everything. Sorry. Just like a war zone.
Mary Hutchins and her husband had to sell nearly half their cattle.
It was one mad scramble to get the animals out. A neighbour came with his big tractor and trailer. He was a godsend. He really was. We had 2 heifers that were due to calve. They had nowhere dry to calve. He said, I'll take them for you.
But the water has been on the fields for so long, they're struggling to feed the cattle that they've got left.
This is costing us hundreds of thousands. We've got stacks of winter feed, but it's all got to be disposed of. It's all got wet and contaminated. And the stacks here, the first 2 layers at least, if not the 3rd layer up, it's only the top layer that's any good at all.
They've been relying on a fodder aid scheme where farmers around the country have donated feed. The clean-up job they face is daunting.
We've got to clear out the big shed out there in order to bring back some in-calf heifers who are due to calve. So we've got to get them back before then, before they can calve.
Mary is insistent it could have been prevented.
The only people that aren't with us are the Environment Agency, and they will not work with us. Our country is what it is because of the farmers have made it over generations. But they have come in over the years when they were established. We know best, we know everything. Sorry, but they don't. You can't turn the clock back. Progress is progress. We've got millions of people to feed. Our job is to produce the food in all aspects to feed the nation, and they're not letting us do it.
I think there's a real sense of despair that lessons that we thought we'd learnt in 2007, even those farmers in Somerset who in 2012 were flooded, didn't see any of those lessons learned. So this is farmers who have repeatedly lobbied MPs. The NFU has been back to government. There was a big government review in 2007, yet nothing seems to have been done. And this was some of those farmers in Somerset particularly, Gloucestershire, maybe in the Thames Valley, who've had back-to-back flooding. It's jeopardising their whole livelihood.
On the issue of flood defence spending, the government is planning to spend over £2 billion over the next 4 years. That is 6% less than over the previous 4 years, but we believe by spending the money better and by leveraging money from private and other sectors, we can actually increase that level of flood defence spending.
We've heard the Prime Minister talking about making sure the money is made available. The lesson for me is we need to take a long-term view. We need to use the best science. We need to make sure that we don't just take the easy options on flooding.
The government has spent millions to solve short-term problems caused by the extreme weather. But what these communities want is long-term solutions.